All right. Okay, cool. Thank you for that, Celeste. Thank you to everybody who has joined this afternoon or morning or evening, depending on where you are. So just to give a brief intro, because we do have a jam-packed agenda today. As Celeste has mentioned, my name is Pretty Thogo. So I currently work for a company called Retail Group Botswana, formerly known as Famous Brands Botswana. I am the head of HR for the company. I've been with Retail Group now for almost 4 years. As the head of HR there, I work with an amazing team of people where we service the business or we support the business or partner with the business to ensure that all the generalist HR needs of the business are met, including talent acquisition, including employer branding that we're going to be talking about today, including employee relations, including HR ops. Just generally anything to do with HR, we are the ones who do that. Yeah, so that is my very quick and brief intro.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Pretty. Just want to ensure that we can view the two of us. Okay. So a little bit of background on myself. I'm going to share the presentation from here. There we go. Can you see it, everyone? Pretty, can you see that?
Yeah, we can see that.
Okay, wonderful. So just a little bit of background on myself. I'm the founder and managing director of Employer Branding Africa. Who are we, in fact? We are one of the first leading consultancies that have focused specifically on assisting and partnering companies with establishing their employer brands and positioning and building and crafting their value propositions to take to market in order to attract and retain and engage talent. Very much around not so much product or service brand, but very much around the employer brand. It's about the methodology that we utilize in not only crafting the framework, but also executing and integrating the employer brand through recruitment marketing strategies. A lot of this work we do is employee engagement climate surveys and external talent surveys, which is usually the foundation on which we build our employer branding strategy. As I say, the activation and integration is also something we do, whether it is your traditional recruitment advertising or whether it is campaign marketing in order to elevate your brand and position trying to fill your high demand roles. We also work in an advisory capacity, consulting into heads of human resources and people, as I've been doing with Pretty. And we run training courses. Why we run training courses is because there's so much missed opportunity when it comes to organizations, talent leaders actually leveraging employer branding and recruitment marketing best practices. And with us moving into a global competitive talent market, it's becoming that much more essential for talent advisors like yourself to actually be leveraging these tools. And I think by the time Pretty and I share our mission and our passion around employer branding, we will more than have convinced you that this is an area that needs to be looked at if you have not adopted it as a best principle within your organization. So that, in fact, is just a little bit of overview on Employer Branding Africa, but the stage is now Pretty's, because at the end of the day, we are here to understand how she has, in fact, built her employer branding strategy. And it's always a nice way to understand, where did this whole thought come from in Pretty's mind? What were her key objectives? Because she's running a lot of most loved brands, but they all product brands, service brands. So Pretty, I'd love you to just share this information with us, because this is obviously where the starting point is always, right?
All right. I almost started talking there without unmuting. Luckily, I remembered. So I mentioned earlier that I work at a company called Retail Group. So for those of you who might not know who Retail Group is, so Retail Group is basically a subsidiary of Famous Brands. Famous Brands is Africa's largest multi-branded food service provider. So what that means, that's just a fancy way of saying we are in the restaurant industry basically, and we own a number of brands within that. So in Botswana specifically, a Retail Group runs 5 brands. So we've got Debonairs Pizza, we've got Steers, we've got Milky Lane, we've got Mugg Bean, and we've got Wimpy. So in order to get into the question of how I got into, or why, or the motivation behind employer branding, I'll tell you a little story. So before I joined Retail Group, I was at another company within the same industry, within the restaurant industry, and I was looking to make a move. Lo and behold, one day I was going through one of the local papers, and I saw an advert from a company that said Africa's largest multi-branded restaurant company. So because I was already in the restaurant industry, I was like, okay, this could be something that would be a good fit for me. So let me apply for this role. So as you do when you're applying for a role, you want to go online to see who this company is, do they have the kind of culture that I want to be a part of? Because the company that I was working for was a great company. So I didn't want to move from a great company to a company that I didn't necessarily know. So I went online and I searched, and zero information came up, basically. Zero information. There was little to know. For some reason, I ended up figuring out that Retail Group is the same as Famous Brands. So I went on the Famous Brands website, but Famous Brands is a South African company. So, it spoke to the culture of the South African company, but I had no clue what Retail Group or Famous Brands Botswana was about. But despite that, I applied for the job, and I eventually got the position. So when I was in the company, once I joined, I realized this company is a big deal. It's amazing to work here. There's so many amazing things happening here, but literally nobody knew about it. So because of that, I was like, you know what, we've got a great thing here. There's a great company to work for. There's a lot of amazing things happening here. We could be getting even better talent if only people knew Retail Group. So that is how the motivation came up. It was a matter of saying we have we're a great brand, we're a great company, we're a great employer. Let's leverage on that. So that's in a nutshell how the motivation came about.
Wonderful. Thanks, Pretty. And I think a lot of companies actually suffer from that. They've always utilized their product or their service brand or their holistic corporate identity in order to attract talent. But the calculated approach towards actually attracting and targeting your passive candidate market has become so much more premeditated and calculating. Yes, your consumers can be your candidates and vice versa. But at the end of the day, there's definitely a specific route to market. And I think it's great that you actually took that stand and elevated that reasoning behind positioning Retail Group as an employer of choice. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
The next question is really, with employer branding, there's obviously, I'm not going to lead the discussion here, but the focus is always, there's always a few challenges, but you've also got key objectives that you need to meet, especially if you're trying to motivate implementing an initiative or a project of this nature. Because at the end of the day, the people that are holding the purse strings actually want to see return on investment. And if they are not in the know when it comes to what employer branding is or what a value proposition is, you normally find a bit of resistance, and there's quite a bit of swimming upstream in that. So maybe if you can just give me an indication of what your main focus areas were in order to not dilute the motivation when you went to the decision makers.
Okay. All right, cool. So I think the first and main thing, the important thing, again, as I said, was that Retail Group is a great company to work for. And as you know, the human resources team, our job is to ensure that we always like to say we want the right seats on the bus. All right. So in order to get the right seats on the bus, there needs to be a few things that are in place for that to happen. So our main focus area on that was to say we can't get the main seats on the bus if the main seats, or if those seats don't know who Retail Group is. So we had to find a way to ensure that the passive candidates that you spoke about, the ones who are not actively looking for jobs, that we are able to reach them and let them know that, hey, we're actually here, we're amazing, and you would be a great fit for us. So that was the first thing. The second thing is that, you know, in as much as at the time we didn't have a well-defined employee value proposition, a well-defined EVP, there were a lot of great things that we were doing with the company. There was a lot of value in candidates joining the company. So another focus area for us was, let us distill that into a key message that we can say to candidates out there, this is what you can look forward to if you were to join Retail Group. And over and above that, you know, we just wanted to be able to build our employer reputation really from an employer branding perspective, to say, you know, there's a lot of opportunities out there for you to go and make a difference in other companies, but this is why you should join Retail Group. This is what we have to offer. This is how your goals and our goals can align, you know, for the greater good. So yeah, that was what we focused on.
Okay, that's wonderful. And that's great in a nutshell, because at the end of the day, you need those focus areas in order to achieve that key objective.
Yeah.
In terms of your value, your actual value proposition, can you possibly provide a sort of a high level of understanding of what steps you took to building that employer value proposition? Because usually there's a strong methodology behind what steps you would take in order to construct or craft an EVP in order to internalize and take it to market.
Yeah. Okay, 100%. Okay, so when we were going through this process, for me especially, the first thing that I didn't want to do was, you know, I didn't want to fall into the trap of us doing a very aspirational EVP that didn't really speak to what was on the ground. Because what then happens if we do that is we, you know, say to the market, this is who we are, and then people come in expecting to find that, and then when they join, it becomes something that is totally different. So the idea was to say, what is the actual experience of people when they are part of Retail Group? So in order to do that, we needed to follow a process that would engage the current team members as much as possible. So we started off by doing an audit of whatever information we would have on the EVP as at current. And to be honest, at the point, there wasn't really anything much. So our next step was to engage with the team, and we asked them, we did surveys firstly, and some of the main questions we asked in the survey is, why did you choose to join Retail Group? And then the next question is, why do you choose to stay with Retail Group? And then lastly, we asked them, what areas do you think the company can improve in terms of our EVP? So from those questions are mainly those 3 questions and other questions in the survey. So we did surveys, we did focus groups with various team members across the board. This helped us to be able to get a sense of what is our actual EVP. And we found that, for example, the reason why people chose to join the company or the group was similar to the reasons why they choose to stay. So in terms of key messaging, it was aligned. And then we also looked at what are some of the things that they felt we could do to keep them on further. And based on that information, we were able to draft our initial EVP or have information that we could use to further the conversation. So with that, we then went and had further focus groups with the teams to say, is this a true reflection of what you feel? What can we do to distill this further? So the focus groups cut across. So we met with team members at the restaurants, we met with the executives, we met with, the different departments, from your marketing to your ops, also different people. And then through that consultative process, we were able to come up with our first draft EVP. So with the first draft EVP, once we had distilled that further, we then said, okay, this is what our engagement has yielded. Is this a true reflection of our EVP? And then the feedback from the team was mostly positive. So our current EVP now, it's I would say it's 90% a reflection of exactly what is on the ground. But we also wanted to have a little bit of that aspirational aspect into it. So, we did incorporate that into it as well. So in a very short, high-level manner, yeah, that is the process that we undertook.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah. Thanks for that.
And I think maybe, so I think maybe the other thing, I don't know whether that would be part of this question. So other than or over and above drafting the EVP, the important thing was to make sure that it doesn't become something that sits on walls or in people's laptops. So we had to ensure that it does go out to, market both internally and externally.
Wonderful. And I think you've highlighted something very important here, because I think that's the biggest mistake that happens, hey, Pretty, is that we've heard of so many different case studies where you can craft a compelling value proposition, but if people cannot feel it through behaviors and values and culture, and they actually don't see it being actioned, it's all pie in the sky, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think that's a big factor, and I think a lot of people are also ready to take it out to market without actually internalizing and bedding it down internally, which means that people actually forget their purpose and impact in terms of, working at an organization as well. So I think the hard work really begins once you have, in fact, crafted that EVP, but bringing it to life and sustaining it, ensuring that it.
Yeah, that is the.
That's the secret sauce, as we say.
Exactly.
Yeah. Pretty, I don't know if you can see if there's any people that have been trying to jump on or not, because I've got my slide presentation on. I don't know if there has been any more people that have tried to come on. Can you see from your side?
No. There hasn't. I'll let them in.
Okay, wonderful. Wonderful. Okay, so I think that is really the anchor, is the value proposition. And again, what you touched on is to actually be very relevant and ensure that it's not just inspirational or aspirational and no one actually sees you delivering the goods, in effect.
Exactly, because that's the quickest way to lose employees. The messaging should be the same as what's on the ground.
And I think also credibility more than anything else, Pretty, because I think that's been a I think that's a big bone of contention, is that people fill out survey after survey after survey, and there's no feedback, and there's no action plan, there's no deliverables, and they get disheartened. Instead, they actually start backtracking and saying, I'm not going to actually fill out another survey because I don't see anything being actioning. So that is where the employer value proposition comes into play.
Exactly.
I think, this question is the biggest one, because I think I have a lot of discussions with companies that really, really try hard to actually get a budget in order to activate an employer value proposition, methodology, or implement a recruitment marketing campaign or whatever, and they just get chopped at the kneecaps. They basically aren't given permission. So so in terms of the challenges, I know that is, again, not leading the conversation, but I know that is a big bone of contention. Just outline to our audience what your challenges, the challenges you actually encountered when it came to saying, I want to do this.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So we did have a number of challenges. So I think the good thing is most of the challenges that we had, we were able to overcome them. So the first and the biggest challenge that we faced, we had an idea of what we wanted to do. We knew the challenge we had around our recruitment, talent acquisition, and we knew that we wanted to implement our employer branding strategy. But at the initially, literally, we didn't have the know-how at all, so we overcame that a little bit by, not a little bit, but a lot. So in terms of how you and I even met was through the course that I undertook, which was an international accredited course on employer branding. So that initial groundwork with the learning of what exactly in doing this process would intake, that was very, very helpful, because now I had a good idea of, okay, this is what we need to do to make this successful. And the good thing about that course as well was that a lot of networks were built. And again, like I said, you are one of the networks that I ended up building because of that course, which leads me to the second challenge that we faced. Most of the time, since with the networks and talking to different people, it's apparent that a lot of HR professionals, when we want to do this sort of thing, we think we can do it ourselves. We tell ourselves that this is something that we can do, but at the end of the day, especially if your role is HR generalist, there won't be time, to be honest. There really won't be time. So you need somebody else. Either you hire your people internally, employer branding specialists who can do that, or you find somebody externally who can assist. And that's where Employer Branding Africa came in for us. I think working with Employer Branding Africa, working with you, Celeste, that made such a huge difference for us, because we were able to work with experts in the field who were able to guide us and add so much value in terms of starting out the process. So that was the second thing. And the last thing, which you alluded to, was budget. We did, we were lucky at Retail Group that our managing director, he is very much on board with these kind of things. He understands the value of things like employer branding. So in as much as we didn't get the full budget that we wanted, the board was gracious enough to say, okay, we will set aside funds so that you guys can at least start this or bring the strategy to life. Yeah, so yeah, those were the three main challenges that we faced.
Yeah, and I think you don't stand alone when it comes to challenges like this, Britty. I think it's number one is it's always buy-in, then it's resources, and then it's budget. And resources. I think The biggest problem is that if you have an HR generalist trying to carry out this this project, it gets diluted and it almost doesn't give much justice to the actual project or implementing the strategy, because it gets put on the back burner and it's more important to fill those high demand roles, and you need to keep, and there your credibility goes down the tubes as well, and trying to meet your key objectives, which is what we started out with, is not then attained. So yeah, so it is those three or four factors are the most important hurdles, I think. Also, not to forget that you are very humble in that you're not even mentioning COVID. You're not even mentioning the climate that you pushed through. And I was witness to that with partnering you, as much as it was business as usual for Retail Group, notwithstanding the fact that you were going through a pandemic. I think we can't overlook that either, Pretty. I mean, if anything, people were more reliant on, your scooter drivers coming and delivering food to the door, as opposed to being able to go in person to grocery stores and that. So I think we can't forget about that either.
Yeah, no, 100%, hey, 100%. So I think I was answering it more from when all things are equal. But yeah, definitely in Retail Group's case, when we launched our employer brand strategy, it was during COVID. It was a very difficult time, and there was a lot of things to overcome at the time. But I think when I look at it on the bright side, was that in a way it came at the right time. People needed they needed to, because what happens when you launch an employer brand is most of the time we think it's meant for external candidates, and you don't necessarily realize how much it's going to mean or how much value it's going to add to your existing employees. So a lot of people's morale were lifted when we were able to launch our employer brand. They were able to get excited once again and be reminded of why they chose Retail Group, why they continue to stay with Retail Group, and it became a very huge opportunity for us to, give recognition to our teams for everything that they were continuing to do during the pandemic. So.
Yeah, I think we forget about that, and hopefully with us going through recovery stage, we don't want a rude reminder, right?
Exactly.
But I think, and that really brings me to the next question, which basically leads on in terms of the business impact that your whole employer branding strategy had on, as you mentioned, the internal morale of your employees, their well-being, and everything else that goes with that. So you have mentioned it, but maybe what you can do is just highlight one or two initiatives within the sort of employee engagement and internal space that you sort of looked after, and how this in fact impacted the bottom line business, the business goals that you were trying to attain, Pretty.
Okay. All right. So what I'm going to say is what we believe in within Retail Group. So I'll talk about this first. We strive to build a culture of recognition, because we believe that is one of the best ways for us to just show gratitude to our teams for the work that they put in. So with us launching our strategy, what it did is that it gave us an opportunity to actually another platform for us to give recognition to our teams. So we have, as most businesses do, we have WhatsApp groups that are where we talk. So normally, So in terms of the strategy and the content plans and calendars that we had, one of the things that we want to do is, we talk about, if you're a Debonairs Pizza customer, we have what we call the real deal pizza. So with Celeste and her team at Employer Branding, one of the things that we wanted to do was to celebrate people who we felt are the real deal. So we don't just only have real deal pizzas, we have real deal employees. So what we would then do, once we spotlight them, share them on our various channels, being LinkedIn, Facebook, we would then share the posts on our WhatsApp groups. So we continue to have so much positive feedback, where people would be on the group saying, thank you so much for doing this, I appreciate this, I feel seen, that sort of thing. So that really boosted employee morale. People now look forward to being on there. So what we also, another thing that we do every month, we post our long service team members on the groups. They, if a person knows that this is my month, they will rush to ensure that they submit that picture, because they don't want to miss out on being highlighted on the channels, on the social media, recognizing that, what I'm doing here matters, my employer sees me, that sort of thing. So I would say that's the biggest thing. So there's another thing that has happened in terms of stuff like, but I think we'll talk about that when it comes to the KPIs. So
Okay.
I think for now, what I'll say is it has built that excitement within the team internally.
That's wonderful, Pretty. Thanks for sharing that. And I think it couldn't have come at a better time, especially with people's morals down, with the pandemic and everything. Apart from that, recognition and reward is so important. And being able to promote that employee-generated content really gives them a sense of pride as well.
Yeah.
And it doesn't cost, it doesn't cost to be able to just ask them to send their picture through so you can put them up there in the limelights and that, eh?
Exactly.
And then externally, what was the business impact externally? Because, when it comes to talent acquisition and finding the passive talent and that, tell me a little bit about how, implementing this employer brand strategy, how this actually ignited that.
Yeah, okay, so what has happened is, so as I told you before, we weren't really present online, but what you'll find is that our workforce, 80% of our workforce at Retail Group is the youth. And the youth are on Facebook, they're on TikTok, they're online, basically. But so I imagine our candidates, our employees, the youth, but we're not where they are. So we had a challenge of finding high quality candidates. So what has since happened is that, even when we put out an advert, where in the past, for example, as an example, let's say a position where we used to get maybe 4 or 5 applications, we could get 20 applications, and you'll find that of that 20, 18 of them are very good candidates that we would want to actually continue the conversation with. So that is one thing that has happened. And just in terms of now what happens when we interview people, you have people, in the past we had people come in, with certain interviews, and you'd see that, this person applied for this job because they saw an advert and they applied. They have no clue who we are, what we do, that sort of thing. And that's a shame, because we're saying we want the right seats on the bus, but these are not necessarily the right seats. These are just seats who are looking for jobs. It wasn't a matter of, what Retail Group is aligned to who I want to be in my career. Whereas now, for example, if we go into interviews, you will hear candidates saying things like, because we talk about or what our EVP speaks to a lot of career growth, based on the fact that we can provide that to our candidates due to our reach in the country. You know, we talk about things like growth and development because we are very big on developing team members. You know, we've got our own BQ accredited facility. So people now in interviews, they bring those things up. You know, they would say things like, you know, I saw on your website that you value learning and development. You know, that is right up my alley because of A, B, C, and D. You know, so people are engaging with us because they know who we are, what we are about, and they know that we have, you know, it's people who have similar values to the company who want to, you know, be on this journey with the company. So that has meant that in terms of quality of hires, that has improved. In terms of number of applications, a whole lot of things like that it's just become better. You know, there's a trend that is on LinkedIn. I don't know whether you've seen this, where, you know, somebody would share a post by a company that they like, and they would say, you know, one day I'm gonna work for this company, they just don't know it yet, you know. And we experienced that too. That never happened because there was no opportunity for that sort of thing to happen because we weren't online, you know. But these days, you know, when you log on to LinkedIn, you find that somebody has shared our post and they've said things like, you know, one day I'm gonna work for Retail Group Botswana, they just don't know it yet. You know, I literally have an interview coming up this Thursday with somebody who actually tagged us and said, you know, this is my employer of choice. There's somebody that there's a company that I want to work with. And we asked for her CV. She had a great CV and we're meeting her on Thursday, you know.
Wow,
so things like
that's fantastic. That's well done, Pretty. And I think, yeah, but you've worked hard for it. And I think, you know, as they say, word of mouth and candidate and employee reviews are always what wins the talent for you. You know, yes, you know, your recruiters and talent acquisition specialists, you can put word out there, but if you've got that endorsement from those key parties, it really stands you in good stead. Which brings me to the next question on the return on investment and the key performance areas, which you've sort of alluded to within the two pockets of internal, you know, employee engagement and external talent acquisition. But maybe what you can do is just give the audience a bit of an outline on what your key performance areas were, and the kind of return on investment you've seen, which, you know, I know you've mentioned, but there might be other additional areas there.
Okay. All right, cool. So basically we had a number of, so when you look, what we did was in terms of the whole recruitment funnel, so there's different stages. For example, like there's awareness. So under awareness, we have different KPIs there. We're looking at things like our social media engagement to see, for example, our reach, followers, you know, views of the stuff that we post. So that's giving us a good indication of, you know, is the stuff that we're putting out online actually reaching candidates, you know. And then when it comes to things like interest, you know, we're looking at, we are measuring the number of applications that we're receiving, you know, things like that. When it comes to things like the actual hiring of teams, we're looking at the quality of hires. You know, we're looking at things like, are the people that we're actually hiring now, because again, it comes down to what I said, that we're saying we want the right seats on the bus. So we are asking ourselves, you know, since we started this process, since we launched the strategy, do we have the right seats on the bus? You know, we're looking at things like time to fill, you know, whereas, you know, it took us longer in the past to fill key vacancies. That time has been shortened, you know. And again, the employer branding strategy hasn't only been useful for us in terms of external candidates. Internally, in terms of our team members, has also been amazing. So we haven't had an opportunity to measure this yet since we launched the strategy, but we're definitely going to be looking at things like our engagement scores from our survey to see whether there's been an improvement in that based off the launch.
That's wonderful. And I'm sure you're going to see good results there. And it's all about asking the right questions and that. So I'm actually quite excited to see how it's shifted, Pretty.
Yeah, 100%. I'm super excited too, hey.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. I'm just worried about time. We've got about 45
we have 15 minutes. Yeah.
Okay.
Left.
So I think the biggest question around, spending resources and budget and energy behind building an employer brand is the actual sustainability. As we both agree, employer branding is a living organism. It's not static, it's evolving all the time. So you have to keep a handle on how your employees' well-being is doing, as well as all the benefits and the competitive edge that you are able, or competitive benefits you are able to give to them, tailoring it obviously around their specific requirements in order to ensure that you keep them engaged, as you say, and not lose them to other employers of choice. And then obviously reiterating and living, as you say, living and showing the behaviors and demonstrating your brand, because otherwise it's just words and you don't see action. As they say, action speaks louder than words. So maybe just give me an indication of how are you sustaining the heartbeat of Retail Group? How are you keeping that heartbeat regular and it's not having any failure?
Okay. All right. So my boss does that for me by including it in my scorecard. But seriously though, the important thing is, again, what it comes down to is the authenticity. You spoke about credibility earlier. So our job as employer branding, strategists, as HR people, all of that is to ensure that, the experience, because this is all about employee experience. So the experience that we say people will get if they engage with our company is this and that and that. It's important to ensure that that remains, so for me as head of HR at Retail Group, what's important to me is ensuring that when we say we want to be an employer of choice, we want to be this amazing company, that it's actually not just words, but it's actually a true thing, something that people can really experience. So we're always thinking, or what we talk about with the team all the time, what we think about when we're doing strats and all of that is, what can we do to be that company that we want to be, and how can we maintain it? So those conversations are top of mind. Again, I jokingly spoke about scorecards, but that's really something that's very important to us. So we include these things in our strategies, in our budgets, all of that. So in a nutshell, I would say that's how we keep it alive.
That's wonderful, Pretty. Thanks for sharing that. I think, the scorecards is important as well, and obviously providing the recognition and rewarding the behaviors that you have really strived hard to build.
Exactly, 100%.
Yeah, completely. So I'm going to ask questions and answers. Just before I start answering, taking questions and answers, just a big thank you for attending. And also, please, if you are interested in understanding how to actually either craft an employer branding strategy and framework, or if you're keen on sort of attending a masterclass that helps you leverage on universal HR practices like employer branding and talent acquisition, please feel free to visit my website, employerbrandingafrica.com. And there is a registration link there. I'm going to be running courses at the end of May and into June, because we just got too many holidays at the moment. So I'm going to hold out until then. But if there's any questions, please, we'd love to hear from you, both Pretty and I. Everyone's very quiet, Pretty.
Celeste, I have a question.
Hi there. Hello. Yes. How can we help?
Maybe I missed something when Pretty was presenting. But before I ask my question, I would like to say it was a great presentation. My question is around the audit that she did. I'm not too sure whether I should call it the audit or the survey. She mentioned that some of the questions that they asked, I don't know if these were all the questions that they asked. She said one of the questions was, why did you choose Retail Group? Why did you choose to stay with us? And when I look at these questions, they seem to have been geared towards what is positive. So my question is around, how about the pain areas? Didn't you ask questions that touched on the pain areas so that you could also turn those pain areas into your value proposition?
All right. Okay. Thank you so much for that question. That's a great question, actually. Okay, so it wasn't just those 3 questions. There were more questions that we asked, but the main ones that helped us to distill our EVP were those 3 questions. So I said the first one was, why did you choose to join? The second one was, why you choose to stay? And the third one was, what can we do to improve on your experience? So that question, so the idea behind that question was that team members would then say, so that it's basically asking for the pain points. It's saying to them, what are some of the areas that you feel we can improve on? And that speaks to things that they currently believe are pain points. So the idea behind that question was so that they can highlight areas where they believe we can actually improve.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, but then I think another thing to add there as well, and so that you may also add your point of view, but our strategy with our EVP, we weren't trying to, I mentioned that we wanted to be aspirational, in that we did want it to be, we didn't necessarily want it to, so it's important for things to be aspirational, I believe, but if it's too aspirational and it doesn't speak to what's on the ground, that's how we lose credibility, because we are telling people, this is our EVP, this is what you can experience when you come and join us. But then people come in and they find something else because we asked them, or we did an EVP, we crafted it based on aspiration and not necessarily what's on the ground. So we wanted our EVP to be a reflection of what exactly is the experience of team members, you know. And I did mention that a little bit of it is aspirational, so that because there are things that we do want to eventually say to people, this is what you can experience at Retail Group, but we didn't want to say that to people if it wasn't the case, you know.
No, completely. I concur there completely, Pretty. And I think, you know, in the work that I've been doing as well, it's all very well having, you know, building an EVP, but it needs to be authentic and it needs to be attainable more than anything else. Yes, you can have aspirational values, and you can actually find that through your survey, there are certain gaps when it comes to people saying, wow, we would really like to be this, but we're not in fact here yet. And that is how I view aspirational values within one's culture. And that's what I've seen coming through quite strongly, as I say, in the work that I've done, is that stretch is also important. You can't ignore it, because if, for example, diversity and inclusion is missing or leadership is not where it should be, then it's something that whoever's the champion behind employer branding needs to keep on their radar and needs to authentically and transparently be able to feed back to your employee workforce that you might not be there right now, but it is certainly an aspirational value that you are looking at reaching or achieving or attaining. So yeah, I think it's that balance, hey, Pretty, between authenticity, but transparency and admittance to be able to say that we definitely want to get there, kind of thing, right?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yes, it's me again. So Pretty, as a follow-up question, from the pain areas that were highlighted from the audit, what happened? Did you address those pain areas first before you launched your EVP?
Okay. Yeah, so no, we didn't. The reason why I say no, we didn't is that so for example, what we did was, the idea behind the process was so that we can distill our EVP messaging into what it was, right? So that survey helped us to understand what it is our employee value proposition is. And there were pain points that were identified. Again, some of them spoke to things that we aspire to be, so for example, pain points for a lot of employees are things like salary. Okay, so I'm not necessarily saying that, okay, so I'm giving that example because that is, for example, something that a lot of, we like to say in our culture, that money is never enough. So that's why I'm giving that example. So for example, let's say team members then said, or let me say team members then said, we all want 50% increase in salary, as an example. So we looked at, some of these things, are they feasible? Are they what we want to do right now? So it was a matter of saying, okay, of these things, how important are, of the things that, or the different pain points that were mentioned, how much of a pain point is this? How many of the teams mentioned this as a pain point? And is this something we can fix right now? If we don't fix this, what is the impact on the business? So some of the things, in terms of quick wins, we fix them immediately. In terms of longer term strategy things, we put together long-term strategies, but that didn't stop us from launching our EVP, because in terms of our key messaging for our EVP, those things were already in place. It was just us now saying, bringing it to life and saying, this is exactly what you can expect if you join Retail Group. So for example, a lot of team members said that, they enjoy working for, they joined Retail Group because of the opportunities for career growth, and they said that they keep staying with the company because of the same opportunities. So that was to us was a clear indication that, we say this is what we offer to people when they join, and that's exactly the experience that they have. So there was no mismatch or anything. So that was a key. And when we did have the focus groups and the surveys, the teams also corroborated that to say, this is indeed why we love Retail Group. So that was a key messaging for us, and there was nothing stopping us from launching our EVP, because in terms of our key messaging, our pillars were in line with what was on the ground. So I think I said a lot, but I hope that clarified the question.
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay. I think we're at the end of our time with you. I hope you all found it constructive, interesting, inspirational, right, Pretty? You like that word? Inspirational. And please feel free to reach out to me. And I'm speaking to Pretty all the time. We're in ongoing contact and everything. If there's anything that you would like to speak to us about, if there's any additional questions that might have come to mind after you've reflected on this conversational webinar. And yeah, please look out, for future webinars. I'm going to keep running them because I think it's important that we enlighten people through Africa on, the benefits of employer branding. And I think Pretty stands testimony to this. I think knowledge is power, as they say. So let's ensure that you enjoy the benefit of any future knowledge sort of sharing conversational webinars in the future. But thank you, everyone. And we hope to be in touch with you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. Thank you, Celeste, for facilitating the webinar.
Thank you, Pretty, and thank you, everyone, for attending. Have a good afternoon further.
Thank you. Same to you. Bye.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.